Good morning, everybody. I am your grateful neighborhood addict named Connor, and this is today's Daily Reflection. July 8th, in ever-growing freedom. The seventh step is where we make the change in our attitude which permits us, with humility as our guide, to move out from ourselves, toward others, and toward God. 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, page 76. When I finally asked God to remove those things blocking me from Him and the sunlight of the Spirit, I embarked on a journey more glorious than I ever imagined. I experienced a freedom from those characteristics that had wrapped me up in myself. Because of this humbling step, I feel clean. I am especially aware of this step because I'm now able to be useful to God and to my fellows. I know that He has granted me strength to do His bidding and has prepared me for anyone and anything that comes my way today. I am truly in His hands, and I give thanks for the joy that I can be useful today. Good evening, everybody. I am so excited about this video today, even though it's taking me a million takes. We have a lot to cover, and I promise, not every video is going to be this long, but by the end of today's, your understanding of Step 7 will be crystal clear. So on to today's reflection. First of all, I love the quote because it supports my framework that Steps 6 and 7 are primarily about improving your relationship with God. Also, I love it when the daily reflections talk about the steps directly because it's hard to understand them without context. The format of the daily reflections provides that, focusing on one step for an entire month at a time. So step 7 isn't simply asking God to remove our character defects. It's asking Him to remove whatever keeps us from becoming the person He created us to be. So every resentment, every fear, every selfish desire, and every defect becomes another opportunity to move closer to God and become more useful to Him and to others. Now, I love that part, and you'll see why in a minute. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is availability, and that's a very different thing. The more I get out of God's way, the more He can work through me. Also, the sunlight of the Spirit. Wow, I love that. So beautiful. And from the reading, I am especially aware of this step because now I am able to be useful to God and others. Wow, I think that sentence right there tells us just how much the concept of self can get in the way and blind us to what's important. So just like yesterday, our selfish wants, desires, expectations, and resentments. We're going to talk more about that today. So how does this relate to recovery? Well, one of the things I think about addiction is that it is known primarily as a disease of self, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't heard it stated exactly so bluntly, but I hear that concept a lot in rooms of recovery. You know, my problem is me, or my problem was that I was all about me, 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 me. Well, what is the opposite of self? Others. So maybe that's why service works so well and is so important in Alcoholics Anonymous. Service is what kept me sober. When I first quit methamphetamine, I started volunteering at Recovery Church, and I got bridged, working in the kitchen, and eventually that evolved into bigger and bigger roles there. And it felt good, not only to give back, but to experience other addicts and alcoholics in a positive environment. And that's the magic of the fellowship. Not only does it provide you somewhere you belong, it provides you with opportunities for service. Me personally, I crave being useful. And that probably says a lot about me. I don't know if that's obvious by doing this channel or not, but it's my form of service to my fellow addicts and alcoholics. But I'll tell you what, I've always been a helpful person, willing to give a stranger their shirt off my back. But I am infinitely more useful to others now that I have God in my life and properly positioned as the primary relationship driving my purpose. So how does this relate to step 7? Well, what can I say about step 7 that hasn't already been said in this reading? I love that because, again, the steps can be mysterious. Like, okay, humbly ask God to remove all my shortcomings. But what does that mean? Why am I doing this way, and how is it supposed to help me? Well, in step 4, we take our inventory. What does that actually mean? Basically, we're creating a map of our lives and marking X's on all the places where things went wrong, whether they were our fault or not. And once we've done that, step 7 is about identifying when those things pop up again in our life and asking God to help us with them. So step 7 becomes a lifelong conversation with God. When resentment appears, ask Him to replace it with forgiveness. When fear appears, ask Him to replace it with courage and peace. When pride appears, ask Him for humility. And when selfish ambition appears, ask him for contentment. One example for me is being a workaholic. I constantly feel like I should be doing or producing something. And when I recognize that happening now, I ask God to replace striving with peace. So that's step 7, learning to depend on God, which is different from step 3, in which we learn to trust God. So on to faith, and this is hard to do. I don't know why, but we like to cling to our ways. We're creatures of habit, and change is hard. But the good news is we don't have to. We just have to allow God to change us. I notice when I ask God, and honestly ask him, to help me and take away my desires, he does. And the funny part, I don't even notice they're gone until way later, when I realize that the thoughts disappeared from my mind. That's when I remember that he's faithful. And I love that feeling. And I don't know why, because I shouldn't. I know that he's faithful always, and his character doesn't change. But there's just something about being human and having proof. It satisfies my soul in such a way that nothing else does. So a message for hope for everyone watching today is this. I never in a million years would have thought I would find myself volunteering in soup kitchens and starting a service-based YouTube channel when I was still smoking meth. I know recovery can be overwhelming sometimes, but if you just keep coming, I promise you that you will keep hearing stories like mine. People whose lives changed completely through the freedom of sobriety and the power of God behind them. So if you're struggling today, just imagine where you could be, and soon. I first quit meth a little over a year ago, and today I'm just over 8 months sober. Your life can change overnight, and if God did it for me, he can do it for you too. So your future may look nothing like your present, and God has a way of taking the very things that nearly destroyed us and transforming them into ways we help other people. Recovery changes more than just our habits. It changes our purpose. So a quick note for the newcomer, just keep coming. And don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle or end. Everyone you hear sharing, today and in these rooms of recovery started exactly where you are, including myself. Keep listening to the success stories and then remind yourself, well, if God did it for them, maybe he can do it for me too, because he can. So a question for the day, just to leave everybody with, is what's one thing that causes me stress in my daily life, and can I give it to God today instead? Thank you so much for listening today and for allowing me to be a part of your journey. I am your grateful neighborhood addict named Connor, and I'm wishing you another day gratefully sober. Until tomorrow.